Obama administration's latest plan to recoup bailout costs will leave 50 of the top financial firms subject to a new tax. Valerie Jarrett is a senior advisor at the White House, and she joins us now to talk about the plan. Valerie, thank you very much for taking a few moments with us. Let me ask you this question. The CEOs, or at least the three CEOs and chairmen who were here testifying yesterday in Washington, said they would be willing to pay for a resolution authority, this fund to cover the cost of big bank bailouts in the future. Would this tax be in addition to that or in lieu of that? If it would be in addition, they would effectively have to be paying hundreds of millions of dollars twice.
Well, what the president is committed to doing is to make sure that every single penny of taxpayer money that was lent to the financial institutions, TARP money to help rescue the financial institutions last year, that all of that money is repaid. He thinks that the best proposal is on banks, large banks, as you said, large financial institutions who have assets of over $50 billion, is that they pay back the remaining approximately $117 billion over the next 10 years. And that's his solution. He thinks it's fair. He thinks it's equitable. He thinks it puts the responsibility on the financial institutions that were principally responsible for taking the risk that created the financial crisis, and also the institutions that primarily benefited from the taxpayer loans. And so this is the solution that the president thinks is most sound.
Valerie, this is Peter Cook up here on the Hill with Erik. Let me ask you about obviously the bank's response to this. One, they say you're asking them to do more loans right now to help foster the economic recovery. Imposing a tax right now will make it harder for them to do that. And there's also the risk that they simply pass this on to their consumers. How will the president respond to that?
Well, first of all, I don't think either argument holds much water. Of course they can afford to lend. That's what they're in the business of doing. They're perfectly able to lend. In fact, when they met with the president a few weeks ago, they said, of course, they're able to lend. They're just looking for the demand to pick up. In terms of their competition with other or passing on the fee to their customers, I don't think that's going to happen, because small and medium-sized banks with whom they'll have to compete are not going to be charged this fee. And so if they pass it on, then they're going to be at a competitive disadvantage. And the fact of the matter is that taxpayers should not be on the hook. Taxpayers should be repaid in full. If they're complaining about this additional burden, then I don't understand how they're creating billions of dollars of bonus pools to pay to their executives. I don't understand how they're spending all this money on Washington lobbyists to help fight this and fight regulatory reform. And so I think that both of those arguments actually don't hold any water.
Valerie, it's Erik again. Are you at all concerned, or is there any concern expressed within the administration that this might create a hostile climate for financial services institutions? After all, in Britain, the so-called super tax on bonuses is supposed to be a one-time affair. Here, you're talking about taxing the banks for 10 years.
Well, let's take a step back and let's remember the law that was passed that allowed us to lend the money to the financial institutions in the first place. And that law, and I encourage you to go read it, explicitly says that the financial institutions will have to repay every penny of taxpayer dollars. Now, the law doesn't require the president to come up with a plan for how that repayment will be imposed until 2013, and the president is moving forward on that now ahead of the bare requirements of the law, because it's clear that the financial institutions have rebounded. Their stock prices are going up. I mentioned the large bonus pools that they're able to pay, and so the president is saying, let's do it ahead of that 2013 schedule. But the fact of the matter is the law requires them to repay the money. So there's no new provision here. Those were the terms that they borrowed the money from the first place.
Valerie, let me ask you really quickly the politics of this. If this vote were held today in Congress on this proposal, would it pass overwhelmingly in your view?
I think it would pass, because it's really hard to argue against it, because you'd be arguing against the taxpayers, and the taxpayers should be repaid. And I don't understand how anyone should argue that the original terms required repayment. We're now imposing that requirement. And so why would anybody object to that? And I don't understand why the banks are objecting to it at all. I think they should
we've just run out of time. Valerie Jarrett, senior White House advisor.